G'day everybody, this is Bede Jermyn, aka The Terrible Australian, and with me as always is my lovely co-host over on the many podcasts over at the Super Network, Super Marcey. Hello Marcey, how are you?
Hello, B. Doing well. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad, thanks. Had a bit of a day off from work, so went to the movies and had a good time as per usual, because as I like to do on my days off. But outside of that, what have you been up to, Marcey?
I'm halfway through. I'm trying to think of what it was called. It's something that popped up on Netflix, I think, earlier this month. I can't think of what it's called. Something, I think it might be Sons of Sam. So,
Oh yeah, I think I did see that
yeah.
on there. I haven't seen it myself yet, but I know that it's on there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's four episodes. I've watched two. And it's not so much about like the Son of Sam killer. It's more about this investigator who was convinced that there was more people involved in those killings.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Actually, that sounds pretty interesting. I've heard that theory, so it should be interesting to.
Mm.
I'll have to get around to actually watching it and
Yes, and I'm
see it for
sure that there
myself.
will be some kind of review in the future from me once I finish watching it. So there you go.
Awesome, man. We'll look forward to hearing that.
Woo.
But we're not here to talk about Sons of Sam. We're here to
No.
do a video review of a film that we had both watched recently, which of
Yes.
course is the independent action film Assault on VA-33, which
Mm-hmm.
was directed by Christopher Douglas-Olen Ray and written by Scott Thomas Reynolds. And the film stars Sean Patrick Flannery, Weston Coppola, Gina Holden, Rob Van Dam, Rachel True, and Marc Dacascos and Michael Jai White.
Mm.
And the plot summary for this film, which I am reading off IMDb,
Thanks, IMDb.
definitely. The plot summary, of course, is Jason Hill, a decorated veteran and PTSD sufferer, meets his wife Jennifer for lunch at the Veterans Affairs Hospital where she works. After Jennifer is called away for an emergency consultation with the head of the US military's Joint Chiefs of Staff, the hospital and everyone in it are taken hostage by heavily armed terrorists. Jason becomes the last line of defense and must battle the terrorists and his own PTSD induced demons to save his wife, the general, the hospital staff, and patients. Now,
Mm.
Marcy, tell us your thoughts on the film Assault on VA-33.
Yeah, so I actually didn't mind this film. It was quite an easy watch. I didn't feel like it was ever boring. I was definitely invested the whole time. It's kind of like a mix between Die Hard and Assault on Precinct 13, but taking place in a hospital. So you definitely have like the hero, who's played by Sean Patrick Flannery. Then you have your villain, who is played by Weston Coppola. I can't remember the villain's name. I think it was Adrian. He's Russian.
Yep.
So you've got those two with all the supporting characters around it, like Michael Jai White is like one of the cops, and at first he doesn't believe what's going on, but then more evidence starts mounting that there's something going on at this hospital. And of course, there's all the henchmen and villains that are around, as well as others at the hospital. So for me, like, yeah, it's low budget and it does show at times, but I think it's actually really well shot and really well framed as well. And it's paced quite well. So I think it does overcome some of the budget constraints. Maybe not so much with some of the CG, but that's what happens. So be it. You can deal with that. And yeah, I just thought it was a decent enough movie. I enjoyed it. It was a little predictable at times. It does play by the numbers, so there are a few kind of I don't like saying they're negative aspects, perhaps aspects that could better be improved upon. I think I prefer to use those terms because I don't like being mean whatsoever. But yeah, look, I thought it was a fairly decent effort, something that, yeah, I didn't mind sitting down watching for 90 minutes. What about yourself, Bede?
Yeah, I didn't mind it myself either. I will admit, though, I don't think, for like sort of an indie action film, it does kind of suffer some of the same type of problems that we see with other kind of similar films that are out there at the moment. Like it's not very original in any way, and it's also very cliched. And some of the acting can be, while there's some good performances in this film, there is some others that were definitely not that good, to be honest. And of course, the writing is kind of a bit, bit by the numbers and pretty straightforward. But I will admit, though, there are still some pretty solid elements about this film that I thought were quite good. And I will admit, just like you, I think this was a pretty easy watch. Like, even though, like, the film for me, I guess, was more of a mixed bag more than anything. But it's one that, if this was like playing, say, on a Friday or Saturday night or even on a Sunday afternoon on TV, I would sit there and actually watch it all the way through, because it is a pretty easygoing watch. And compared to sort of other sort of indie or straight to VOD action films that are out there at the moment, this one is definitely one of the more enjoyable ones. There's a lot of them, are just pretty boring and quite dull. But this one at least is fun, while at the same time it does take its story seriously to a point, so that it's not like a parody or anything. And of course, but I think like the action set pieces are pretty solid for a film of this budget. Even though some of them, like hand-to-hand fight stuff, is a bit shaky cam, suffers from shaky cam, and but there are some pretty solid other solid elements in that. I think Sean Patrick Flannery, I thought, was pretty solid in the lead role as Jason.
I agree.
And I thought, like, setting this kind of Die Hard-esque type of story in a sort of veterans hospital was actually pretty interesting, because we get to see Flannery's character kind of struggle, being that he's a former war veteran himself who does suffer from PTSD, and seeing how basically he has to kind of overcome that to save the day. And we do see him struggle quite a bit, and I think that's what makes him at least a much more interesting protagonist compared to other sort of leads in action films.
I would agree, for sure. Because it does actually really, I think, handle the PTSD element with a lot of care and being very genuine about what it is, how it affects people, what it can be like when they're going through, very bad flashbacks. Because, the main character is a veteran, and unfortunately PTSD can be very common because you've been to war, you've seen and dealt with some really horrible and tragic things. So, obviously it makes sense to add that into this. And the main character's wife does do counseling and stuff with PTSD sufferers. So I think, tying it all back in together was really good. And I think, like I said, it was handled with a lot of care. And I think that sets it aside from, other similar movies, that it does tackle a serious subject, and it does it in a way that I feel like is respectful.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And like, it does that really well, which I think definitely makes it a much more interesting film because of it. And of course, like I said, outside of Flannery, like most of the performances I thought were solid. Others better than others, of course. Like, I will admit, I think if you go into this film thinking that Michael Jai White and Marc Dacascos, who are like two big action stars in their own right, are going to have like huge roles in this film, I think people will come across as a bit disappointed, because they're more supporting players in this film, particularly Marc Dacascos, his character's kind of more like an extended cameo more than anything else, even though he's like on all the posters for this film. But that being said, though, I thought they were still pretty solid for what they did. But I will admit, though, the performance that I thought was the strongest of the bunch, and one that I was really impressed by, was Weston Coppola, who plays the role as the film's villain, Adrian Rabakov. And I really thought he did such a great job in this role, because, like, this is a character that could easily have been, played up like an over-the-top cartoonish Russian kind of villain, but he takes a much more sort of subtle approach to the character, which to me made him a much more interesting villain, because it made him much more quieter and more calculating, and also much more intimidating as a screen presence.
I definitely agree
And
with you there. Yeah.
and like he does a really good job, and like he's very soft spoken, and when he
Mm.
actually does sort of like have his moments of violence or screams and yells, like you can see it just comes out of nowhere and actually takes takes you aback a bit,
Mm.
because it's coming out from someone who's up to that point was such a quiet but very menacing presence on screen.
Yeah.
And when you see Coppola kind of go at this character, like especially in these kind of very, sort of scenes where he does inflict violence um, or and all
Mm.
that, he does such a very convincing job, and it's very believable. And like I
Mm.
said, he just comes across as very intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. Even without speaking, his character does feel very intimidating, and I think that's just credit to how he tackled the role and how he portrayed it. And I really liked his Russian accent. It felt very authentic, at least to me.
Oh
Not that
yeah,
I,
definitely.
I'm no expert on Russian accents, but to me, it felt more authentic. It wasn't, like you said, really over the top. And yeah, he didn't go like too insane. He kept it very subtle, but subtle in a good way. And of course, before we move on, people can listen to our interview with Weston Cage Coppola either at supermarcey.com or over on the YouTube channel.
Indeed, and it was a really good interview. And if you want to hear us talk with
Mm.
Weston about his process of portraying this character, definitely check it out.
Mm.
And you'll get to hear us interview and also talk about a bunch of other stuff as well.
He's a true
But
badass.
exactly. But overall, I think this film it's a pretty solid,
Mm.
mostly solid, indie action film.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not great by any means, and in some ways, it's kind of just more your above average one within the subgenre.
Mm.
But I will. That being said, though, it does it is still have its qualities that I
Yeah.
thought was still pretty solid, and also like it's actually compared to other films that other similar films that I've seen in the past few years. This is one definitely that's a bit more enjoyable than others,
Yeah.
and and I think it's a good time waster. This one.
Yeah, at least look, this is a lot more watchable than say what we watched for a Tubi Tuesday episode, Sniper Special Ops. That
Yes,
one was
exactly.
really, really like dull and kind of boring. This one, you never feel that at all. You're definitely invested with it, and that's what I like about it. It doesn't you don't lose your attention when you're watching it. And funnily enough, both these movies feature Rob Van Dam, although in this one, Rob Van Dam kind of has the Seagal role where he's just sitting down for the whole time.
Yeah, I know. They probably shot like all of his scenes in
Yeah.
like one day.
Yeah.
But I will say this, which I thought was pretty funny. But I will say this one thing I was actually surprised about, and I thought was seeing Rachel True from who's best known for her role on The Craft,
Yeah.
has a small role in this film too, and it is actually quite a memorable little part as well.
Yeah, it was really cool to see her in this. And funnily enough, I had just seen her recently because I watched Horror Noir, and she is one of the people who speak about the subject in that film. So it was very cool.
Awesome.
Yes.
But Marcy, what rating do you give Assault on VA-33?
Look, my rating for this would be 3 out of 5. I think it's definitely a little bit above average from the usual fare. I think I give it a bit more because I think while it does play by the numbers, other aspects, I think it really kind of did its own thing and went for more, such as obviously the use of the PTSD, the main villain, stuff like that. Yeah. What about yourself, Bede?
I personally would give it about probably 2.5. But that being said, though, I still think even though it is sort of is quite cliche, kind of by the numbers in a lot of ways. But like I said before, there are definitely elements about it that make it a lot more interesting of a indie straight to VOD action film.
Yeah.
And also it actually has some solid performances, some pretty cool action set pieces, and of course, it's one that it doesn't you don't feel bored when you watch it. And it actually
exactly.
and it actually for most of it is actually quite fun, and it's in certain ways.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone wants to check it out, by all means, go check it out. You might love it, you might hate it, you might be somewhere in the middle.
Well, I know the film is out now to rent and buy on video on demand services. So definitely, if you see it, definitely check it out. Because I'd say it's definitely worth a watch. Even though I gave it 2.5, I'd say it's like if you enjoy a good, solid action film, or even one that's, you kind of ones that kind of remind you of sort of the kind of the B grade but still enjoyable action films that from the 80s and 90s. This one is definitely I'd say give this one a watch, because it's definitely one of the more stronger ones out there of the past few years, at least in terms of this type of film anyway.
It's definitely one of the more enjoyable ones that I've seen. So that's our review for Assault on VA-33. You can always check us out at supermarcey.com. And if you so desire to, you can have a look at our Patreon at patreon.com/thesupernetwork, where we have lots of awesome exclusives and early access to podcasts. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and like the video. You know the drill. Help us out.
Definitely. And if you have seen Assault on VA-33, share us your thoughts in the comments below as well.
We always love to hear from people, and if you agree, disagree, awesome. Tell us what you think. So,
exactly.
Until next time, I've been super, Bede's been terrible, and we're probably not going to go near a hospital just in case a Russian dude is going to try to take hostages there. I don't know.
I don't know about you, Marcey, but I think I might do that like tomorrow, to be honest.
Just become like the new Adrian Rubikov.
Yes,
character.
and go around there with Russian accent. No, that Russian accent of mine was terrible, but
that was way over the top. Weston definitely did a better job than you, Bede.
Exactly. All right, I'll just go in there with an Aussie accent instead. So
yes.
But well, once again, we hope you all enjoyed this video review, and we'll see you all later. See you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.